The Treaty of Tordesillas, signed at Tordesillas on June 7, 1494 and authenticated at Setúbal, Portugal, divided the newly discovered lands outside Europe between Portugal and Spain along a meridian 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands. This line of demarcation was about halfway between the Cape Verde Islands and the islands entered by Christopher Columbus on his first voyage, named in the treaty as Cipangu and Antilia. The lands to the east would belong to Portugal and the lands to the west to Spain. The treaty was ratified by Spain, July 2, 1494 and by Portugal, September 5, 1494. The other side of the world would be divided a few decades later by the Treaty of Zaragoza or Saragossa, signed on April 22, 1529, which specified the antimeridian to the line of demarcation specified in the Treaty of Tordesillas. Originals of both treaties are kept at the Archivo General de Indias in Spain and at the Arquivo Nacional da Torre Tombo in Portugal. Signing and enforcement. The Treaty of Tordesillas was intended to solve the dispute that had been created following the return of Christopher Columbus and his crew. On his way back to Spain he first reached Lisbon, in Portugal. There he asked for another meeting with King John II to show him the newly discovered lands. After knowing of this situation the king sent a threatening letter to the Catholic monarchs stating that by the previous Alcar section of his treaty signed in 1479 all of the lands discovered by Columbus belonged, in fact, to Portugal. Also, the Portuguese king stated that he was already making arrangements for a fleet to depart shortly and take possession of the new lands. After reading the letter the Catholic monarchs knew they didn't have any military power to match with the Portuguese, so they pursued a diplomatic way out. So, on May 4, 1493 the Spanish-born Pope Alexander VI decreed in the Bull Intercoetera that all lands west and south of a pole-to-pole line 100 leagues west and south of any of the islands of the Azores or the Cape Verde Islands should belong to Spain, although territory under Catholic rule as of Christmas 1492 would remain untouched. The bill did not mention Portugal or its lands, so Portugal could not claim newly discovered lands even if they were east of the line. Another bill, Dudum Sequidum, entitled Extension of the Apostolic Grant and Donation of the Indies and dated September 25, 1493, gave all mainlands and islands, at one time or even yet belonged to India to Spain, even if east of the line. The Portuguese King John II was not pleased with that arrangement, feeling that it gave him far too little land. It prevented him from possessing India, his near-term goal. He opened direct negotiations with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain to move the line to the west and allow him to claim newly discovered lands east of the line. The treaty effectively countered the bills of Alexander VI but was subsequently sanctioned by Pope Julius II by means of the Bill A Curiae Pro Bono Passes of January 24, 1506. Even though the treaty was negotiated without consulting the Pope, a few sources call the resulting line the Papal line of demarcation. Very little of the newly divided area had actually been seen by Europeans, as it was only divided via the treaty. Spain gained lands including most of the Americas. The easternmost part of current Brazil was granted to Portugal when Pedro Alvares Cabral landed there while he was en route to India. Some historians contend that the Portuguese knew of the South American bulge that makes up most of Brazil before this time, so his landing in Brazil was not an accident. The line was not strictly enforced. The Spanish did not resist the Portuguese expansion of Brazil across the meridian. The treaty was rendered meaningless between 1580 and 1640 while the Spanish king was also king of Portugal. It was superseded by the 1750 Treaty of Madrid which granted Portugal control of the lands it occupied in South America. However, the latter treaty was immediately repudiated by Spain. The first Treaty of San Ildefonso settled the problem, with Spain acquiring territories east of the Uruguay River and Portugal acquiring territories in the Amazon basin. Tordesillas Meridian. The Treaty of Tordesillas only specified the line of demarcation in leagues from the Cape Verde Islands. It did not specify the line in degrees, nor did it identify the specific island or the specific length of its league. Instead, the treaty stated that these matters were to be settled by a joint voyage which never occurred. The number of degrees can be determined via a ratio of marine leagues to degrees applied to the Earth regardless of its assumed size, or via a specific marine league applied to the true size of the Earth, called our sphere by historian Henry Harris. The earliest Spanish opinion was provided by Jaime Ferrer in 1495 at the request of and to the Spanish king and queen. He stated that the demarcation line was 18 a degree west of the most central island of the Cape Verde Islands, which is Fogo according to Harris, having a longitude of 24 a degree 25 w of Greenwich. Hence Ferrer placed the line at 42 a degree 25 w on his sphere, which was 21.1% larger than our sphere. Ferrer also stated that his league contained 32 Olympic stades, or 6.15264 kilometers according to Harris, thus Ferrer's line was 2,276.5 kilometers west of Fogo at 47 a degree 37 w on our sphere. The earliest surviving Portuguese opinion is on the Cantino planisphere of 1502. Because its demarcation line was midway between Cape St. Roque and the mouth of the Amazon River and its river is marked Rio Grande, Harris concluded that the line was at 42 a degree 30 w on our sphere. Harris believed the large estuary just west of the line on the Cantino map was that of the Rio Marana Poundo, whose flow is so weak that its gulf does not contain fresh water. In 1518 another Spanish opinion was provided by Martin Fernández de Enciso. Harris concluded that Enciso placed his line at 47 a degree 24 w on his sphere, but at 45 a degree 38 w on our sphere using Enciso's numerical data. Enciso also described the coastal features near which the line passed in a very confused manner. Harris concluded from this description that Enciso's line could also be near the mouth of the Amazon between 49 a degree and 50 a degree w. In 1524 the Spanish pilots Thomas Duran, Sebastian Cabot, and Juan Vespucias gave their opinion to the Badajoz junta, whose failure to resolve the dispute led to the Treaty of Saragossa. They specified that the line was 22 a degree plus nearly 9 miles west of the center of Santo Antipoundo, which Harris concluded was 47 a degree 17 w on their sphere and 46 a degree 36 w on our sphere. In 1524 the Portuguese presented a globe to the Badajoz junta on which the line was marked 21 a degree 30 west of Santo Antipoundo. Antimeridian, Moluccas and Treaty of Zaragoza. Initially, the line of demarcation did not encircle the Earth. Instead, Spain and Portugal could conquer any new lands they were the first to discover, Spain to the west and Portugal to the east, even if they passed each other on the other side of the globe. But Portugal's discovery of the highly valued Moluccas in 1512 caused Spain to argue in 1518 that the Treaty of Tordesillas divided the Earth into two equal hemispheres. After the surviving ships of Magellan's fleet visited the Moluccas in 1521, Spain claimed that those islands were within its western hemisphere. In 1523, the Treaty of Vitoria called for the Badajoz junta to meet in 1524, at which the two countries tried to reach an agreement on the anti-meridian but failed. They finally agreed in a treaty signed at Zaragoza that Spain would relinquish its claims to the Moluccas upon the payment of 350,000 ducats of gold by Portugal to Spain. To prevent Spain from encroaching upon Portugal's Moluccas, the anti-meridian was to be 297.5 leagues or 17 a degree to the east of the Moluccas, passing through the islands of Las Velas and Santo Thome. This distance is slightly smaller than the 300 leagues determined by Magellan as the westward distance from Los Ladrones to the Philippine island of Samar, which is just west of due north of the Moluccas. The Moluccas are a group of islands just west of New Guinea. However, unlike the large modern Indonesian archipelago of the Maluku Islands, to 16th-century Europeans the Moluccas were a small chain of islands, the only place on Earth where cloves grew, just west of the large North Moluccan island of Halmahera. Cloves were so prized by Europeans for their medicinal uses that they were worth their weight in gold. 16th and 17th century maps and descriptions indicate that the main islands were Ternate, Tidor, Moti, Makian and Bacan, although the last was often ignored even though it was by far the largest island. The principal island was Ternate at the chain's northern end in diameter, on whose southwest coast the Portuguese built a stone fort during 1522 which could only be repaired, not modified, according to the Treaty of Saragossa. This north-south chain occupies 2 degrees of latitude bisected by the equator at about 127°24', with Ternate, Tidor, Moti, and Makian north of the equator and Bacan south of it. Although the treaty's Santo Thome Island has not been identified, its Islas de las Velas appear in the 1585 Spanish History of China, on the 1594 World Map of Tusplantius, on an anonymous map of the Moluccas in the 1598 London edition of Linschoten, and on the 1607 World Map of Petro Carrillo, identified as a north-south chain of islands in the northwest Pacific, which were also called the Islas de los Ladrones during that period. Their name was changed by Spain in 1667 to Islas de las Marianas, which include Guam at their southern end. Guam's longitude of 144°45' is east of the Moluccas' longitude of 127°24' by 17°21', which is remarkably close by 16th-century standards to the treaty's 17° east. This longitude passes through the eastern end of the main North Japanese island of Hokkaido and through the eastern end of New Guinea, which is where Fra Copyright Rick Duran placed the demarcation line. Moriarty and Kaisman placed the demarcation line at 147°E by measuring 16.4° east from the western end of New Guinea. Despite the treaty's clear statement that the demarcation line passes 17° east of the Moluccas, some sources place the line just east of the Moluccas. The Treaty of Saragossa did not modify or clarify the line of demarcation in the Treaty of Tordesillas, nor did it validate Spain's claim to equal hemispheres, so the 2 lines divided the Earth into unequal hemispheres. Portugal's portion was roughly 191°, whereas Spain's portion was roughly 169°. Both portions have a large uncertainty of a plus or minus 4° because of the wide variation in the opinions regarding the location of the Tordesillas line. Portugal gained control of all lands and seas west of the Saragossa line, including all of Asia and its neighboring islands so far discovered, leaving Spain most of the Pacific Ocean. Although the Philippines were not named in the treaty, Spain implicitly relinquished any claim to them because they were well west of the line. Nevertheless, by 1542, King Charles V decided to colonize the Philippines, judging that Portugal would not protest because the archipelago had no spices. Although a number of expeditions sent from New Spain arrived in the Philippines, they were unable to establish a settlement because the return route across the Pacific was unknown. King Philip II succeeded in 1565 when he sent Miguel López de Legazpi and Andrés de Urdaneta, establishing the initial Spanish trading post at Cebu and later founding Manila in 1571. Besides Brazil and the Moluccas, Portugal would eventually control Angola, Mozambique, Portuguese Guinea, and Sao do Toma Copyright and Cipe in Africa. Several bases or territories as Muscat, Ormuz and Bahrain in the Persian Gulf, Goa, Bombay and Daman and Diu in India. Ceylon, and Malacca, bases in present-day Indonesia as Makassar, Sula and Ambon, Portuguese Timor, the Intrapati base of Macau and the Intrapati enclave of Tanegashima, in the Far East. Spain, on the other hand, would control vast western regions in the Americas, in areas ranging from the present-day United States to present-day Argentina, an empire that would extend to the Philippines, and bases in Ternate and Formosa. Effect on other European powers. The treaty was historically important in dividing Latin America, as well as establishing Spain in the Western Pacific until 1898. However, it quickly became obsolete in North America, and later in Asia and Africa, where it affected colonization. It was ignored by other European nations, and with the decline of Spanish and Portuguese power, the home countries were unable to hold many of their claims, much less expand them into poorly explored areas. Thus, with sufficient backing, it became possible for any European state to colonize open territories, or those weakly held by Lisbon or Madrid. The attitude towards the treaty that other governments had was expressed in a statement attributed to King Francis I, "Show me Adam's will." Modern claims. The Treaty of Tordesillas has been invoked by Chile in the 20th century to defend the principle of an Antarctic sector extending along the meridian to the South Pole, as well as the assertion that the treaty made Spanish all undiscovered land south to the pole. The Treaty of Tordesillas has been invoked by Argentina in the 20th century as part of its claim to the Falkland Islands Malvinas Islands. See also, Catholic Church in the Age of Discovery, List of treaties, History of Portugal, Notes. References. Bibliography, Edward G. Bourne, The History and Determination of the Line of Demarcation by Pope Alexander VI, Between the Spanish and Portuguese Fields of Discovery and Colonization, American Historical Association, Annual Report for 1891, Washington, 1892. Senate Miscellaneous Documents, Washington, Volume 5, 1891 92, pp. 103 30. James R. Ackerman, The Imperial Map 138. Leonard Wyandoya, The World of Maluku, Eastern Indonesia in the Early Modern Period. Honolulu, University of Hawaii Press, 1993, ISBN 0-8248-1490-8. Emma Helen Blair, ed., The Philippine Islands, 1493–1803, containing complete English translations of both treaties and related documents. Stephen Abaun, 1494, How a Family Feud in Medieval Spain Divided the World in Half. ISBN equals 978-0-312-61612-0. Charles Corn, The Sense of Eden. ISBN 1-56836-202-1. Armando Cortese, Antonio Pereira and His Map of circa 1545, Geographical Review 29 205-225. Francis Gardner Davenport, ed., European Treaties Bearing on the History of the United States and Its Dependencies to 1648. Translation of the Treaty of Tordesillas by Davenport. Henry Harris, The Diplomatic History of America, its first chapter 1452 1493 1494. Edgar C. Knowlton, China and the Philippines in El Periquillo Sarmiento, Hispanic Review 31 336-347. External links, Treaty of Tordesillas, Treaty of Tordesillas from Archivo General de Indias, Treaty of Tordesillas English translation from Blair, Compact between the Catholic sovereigns and the King of Portugal regarding the demarcation and the division of the Ocean Sea English translation from Blair.